born in Singapore. My dad was with the Foreign Service, so he did 2-year tour of duties until I was 8. So I went Singapore, Jakarta, Bonn, Paris, or Bonn may have just been there was a lot of trips when you live in those places, but the actual places he was Geneva, Switzerland, Jakarta, Singapore, and then when it was time for my older brother to go to high school, we came back to the DC area. So I grew up 8 to 18 in the DC area. And then as far as Utah goes, I've been here 21 years in Park City. But before that, with my previous profession, I played in 122 cities over 15 years. So that's why I'm pretty well traveled. From my youth was overseas, and then my adulthood was all baseball and United States. And then now for pleasure, I try and go everywhere.
So when he says Temecula, you know where that is?
Of course. Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
I've heard of it.
Yeah,
so it's close to San Diego, I'm guessing, since you're from San Diego?
Yeah. Every league has 15 teams, and when you play for 15 years and every league has 15 cities, you rack them up.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Robin, let's start with that first 8 years where you're traveling, and tell us about that and
so
the
I don't
identity.
remember much. The last place we lived was in Paris, which I have very fond memories of. My parents, we lived on a government base. My dad was at the embassy, and so it was very English compound, not military base, because there were State Department, but there was a military presence just in the people there. But this was in the 70s, in the early 70s, so it wasn't, they weren't on high alert until like the embassy bombing years later. So yeah, it was a really cool, casual atmosphere. Grew up playing pool in the courtyard and smelling croissants at the bus stop, waiting to go to school and stuff. So that was cool. I really have fond memories of Paris.
That's really cool.
Yeah, but that was it. Everything else is kind of a blur.
Please tell us a little bit about your parents.
My mom was born in Calcutta, India. I have a unique ethnic background as well. My mom is both of British and Indian descent, and my dad is of Irish and Native American descent. So half my family looks pretty white with blue eyes, and half my family looks more dark, like me on both sides. So it's an interesting mix. But yeah, I forgot how dominant my mom, being from India, was in my influence until the last few years.
Cool.
Yeah.
We'll want to hear a little bit about that.
I don't think she will. Yeah, but yeah.
So when you came back to the U.S. at 8, did you feel like a foreigner in your country of citizenship, or did you just
Not
blend
at
right
all,
in?
just because it was still in the DC area where everybody was government related in some fashion. So yeah, it seemed easy. And again, it was so early on.
And as you enter high school, reintegrate here into the U.S., tell us about what you were like back then. And what we like to do here, by the way, is try to make connections to sort of younger versions of ourselves and see the implications.
So I guess being in the melting pot in DC at the time, I went to Bryn Mawr Elementary School, which was a real melting pot of cultures, and it was good to be a young, fast Caucasian. I'm not going to lie to you. It definitely shaped some of my athletic endeavors, trying to keep up with some of my friends growing up at the time. I think I ended up having like four friends that ended up becoming professional athletes. So we just always pushed each other at a very young age. And actually, I just got a call from my lifelong friend who I haven't talked to in forever. It could be 20 years, which it has been since we've seen each other. He's been in Saudi Arabia for 13 years, and he ended up being a professional soccer player, ending his career in Asia, stayed over there, then made his way to Saudi Arabia, and we haven't seen each other since, and we're gonna hook up next week. But
so
yeah,
cool.
we were childhood elementary friends, and he was my best friend, and he became a professional soccer player, and I became a professional baseball player.
So did you leave high school knowing, I'm going to play baseball? That's what I'm going to do. That's what I want to do.
Yeah, I was one of those strange kids. When I was young, I just really excelled at sports. And my brother was 5 years older than me, I tried to keep up with him. So my entire life keeping up with him, and he was an exceptional athlete in his own right. So it just made me that much better than kids my own age. And by the time I was a sophomore in high school, I was playing in collegiate level summer leagues.
Wow.
Got drafted by the Orioles out of high school, went on to keep my professional options open by going to a junior college. For those of you that don't know, if you commit to a 4-year school, you have to be there for 3 years at the minimum before you could sign professionally. I had an injury in high school. I wanted to get into the professional ranks before I missed that opportunity. It would be so rare to do it. So I went the junior college route, got drafted by the Cubs, signed out of there with them, played for 15 years, and then life kind of began after that.
15 years.
Yeah.
Is that a typical, the length of time you played in baseball, is that, it's certainly not typical for a professional athlete, but is it typical in
No,
baseball?
that's a lengthy career, and it's really lengthy considering I only got 4 of those years in the big leagues. Like, I stayed around maybe way too long. I don't know. It's tough to take off the uniform when you really love competing and think that you're better than maybe you are, or maybe you are, and it doesn't really matter once the business side of the decisions takes over. I was a really low round pick. I should not have made it to the big leagues. I was a 32nd round pick. And at the time when I made it to the big leagues, if I remember correctly, I think I was only the 5th or 6th player in the history of the Cubs draft, which used to be much more elaborate and longer, that would have made it to the big leagues past the 30th round. So I always had to wait for other gentlemen to fail in order to have my opportunity to really go sit on the bench. So it was very humbling. I got told 7 times in my career I wasn't good enough to stay in the big leagues. So that's very humbling. In the industry, in AAA, it's called a 4A player. You're too good for AAA. You always do really well there, but you always don't necessarily become a starter or a guy in the big league. So a fringe player is kind of our journeyman, is what I turned into, and that teaches you a lot of life lessons.
So you and I have had many conversations about life and life lessons, and sort of hearing your stories reminisce back. One thing I haven't asked you directly, but I want to ask you now for the first time, is as you look at all the, I was going to say young men and women, but young men that you were playing with, is there a theme that ties them together? Is there a theme that selects that elite group from everybody else?
I think it's to make it to that level, it's the people that want to put in the work, clearly. I mean, it takes, according to all the books, outliers and what's the talent code and all those. I mean, it takes 10,000 hours to perfect a skill, and you either put them in or you don't. And then once you're on the same level playing field of everybody around you who's put them in, then it starts to go to the minute details of what it is. Is it really, are you not fast enough? Or you don't throw hard enough? Or no, it's really, can you cut the angles? Can you recognize the pitcher? Can you read things that your teammates aren't reading about somebody, to get tendencies, to get, you become an analyst. Like, if you want to be a great hitter, you become an analyst of the person you're competing against, and that's the guy holding the ball. I mean, I could, you don't tell your friends this, but I knew a lot of pitches that were coming just the way guys' characteristics and their idiosyncrasies, if you will. Yeah. So that's why I told you I'm so good at observation, because you had to be. Not only do you have to recognize that dude throwing a ball 100 at your head, you have to recognize the situation, and it might not be to swing out of your shoes. It might be to throw a bunt down. There's a lot of chess in baseball that the average person doesn't maybe see going on behind it. And it's a game of failure, so that always stinks. It's no fun striking out in front of 60,000 people, walking back to the dugout. That's humbling.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it this strange? You allude to you're all essentially competing with one another for few spots. Is there this interesting blend of they're your teammates, but they're also people you're competing with?
Yeah, no different than any other business, I'd say, now that I'm in the real world as well. And that is, hopefully you surround yourself with people, like it seems like the energy in this room, with people that are happy for your successes. That's not really, because of the nature of alpha males and egos, yeah, he's my teammate, but I want to get up to the big leagues too, or I want to stay in the big leagues. I don't want this dude taking my job. I mean, it takes the same level of maturity to root on your teammate as it takes the same immaturity to secretly wish they're not going to do well, so that you go up. It's a long season, right? It's a grind, and you're with 25 guys for a 162 game schedule. It's a grind. Yeah, I don't know of any sport that's a bigger grind than baseball, except maybe the 3-day, 5-day, 6-day cricket match that you got to stand out there for like literally 5 days in a row with everybody. But that's a lot. But yeah, it's a long one. I loved competing. I wish if I had to do all over again, I probably would have played tennis.
Really?
Yeah.
Not pickleball.
That's coming. That's still coming. Yeah.
So for the pickleball players here, and I wish Caden were here, Robin is undefeated.
No, not even close.
Oh, come on.
No, that's in my own mind.
You're a professional.
No, that's in my own mind.
So-
I turned 50 this year, and I have promised the guys that I play with that I will go and compete with them at a couple tournaments. I just play recreationally right now. Yeah.
So
That's all.
we need to stick our top two against Robin. Yeah, there you go. We just had a very serious pickleball tournament.
Yeah.
Yeah. You alluded to if you had to do it over again, you might do tennis, and perhaps half jokingly, but what decisions might you have made differently in baseball?
I really would have played tennis.
Really?
Yeah, I really would have. Because
Wow.
if you beat the guy across from you, you win and you make money. There's no business decisions about it from other people. I have my team, I form my coaches with my trainers, I go to that tournament, I win.
Wow.
I get the money, split it up, do all that, but I don't have front office people saying, we invested $3.7 million in this guy in the second round, and Jennings is a 32nd round pick. Good guy, but he's signed for $40,000. We're not getting a return on investment on a 28-year-old guy, even though he's killing it right now. This dude's 3 years younger, and we invested $3 million in him. He's going up. End of discussion. I can't control that.
That's
No
really
matter
how it works.
well I'm playing, I don't control that decision. Yeah.
Wow.
So that was very frustrating. That, AAA is a really negative space because you all know you're kind of good enough, but it's chance and opportunity, like a lot of things, like we've discussed this morning. Chance and opportunity aren't always in your control, and you need to be very grateful when they present themselves.
Robin, I want to go to the personal side in a bit, but before we do that, when baseball was your life for so long, and you reached that level, what is it like making the decision to leave it and do something else?
So the joke there is if you're in the big leagues and you stop playing, you retire. And if you're in AAA and you stop playing, you quit. So I quit. I had been told enough times that I, wasn't good enough, and I was at the end of my own mental capacity to make another run for it. I had a very strange situation happen that came at 31 or 32, if I'm remembering correctly. And then at 35, a weird thing happened where I was doing a instructional video series that I had to stand in because one of our guys backed out last minute or had something come up. And next thing you know, in being scared of being in front of a camera and making a fool of myself forever, I really took the project very seriously. And in removing myself from being a player, it made me understand the things I was trying to teach even more so, and put in the fact that my brother and I were the people doing the work on it, right? The design and the storyboarding and everything. I was supposed to be on the backside with him, not in front of the camera. And I learned a lot. And we were in the middle of shooting, and I was doing some things that I hadn't even been able to do as a player because I had worked out a few things in my swing that I probably wouldn't have been open to because I had success before. And the next thing you know, I was doing some things, and I had been backcountry. I was in really good shape at the time. And so my friends were like, dude, you're not too old. And so I went back and played at 35 and made it back to, of course, AAA again. And I would have been in the big leagues, I really believe this, and they told me this, had the Nationals been a good team that year. Had they needed a veteran guy off the bench, I could have filled that role, but because they were 30 games under 500, a new team, they didn't need veteran help. Once again, chance and opportunity. I really could have been like a story like that with just one little click, and it had nothing to do with me. It had to do with the team being so bad that I couldn't get, they didn't need me. So there's always little things like that, Yeah. And again, this is odd because I don't talk baseball anymore at all. Like I talk stories like off the field stories with my guy friends, and they want to hear those and all that, but I don't talk that much about
I won't ask you to repeat any of those here.
Yeah. Well, now it's on. Now I don't have to because this will be everybody else. Yeah.
Let's go now to the personal side for a second. So, given your stories of travel on the road, buses, most of the year, what is it like doing what you did, which is trying to build a family, a relationship in a family through those years?
That kind of lifestyle is not easy. It took a few years for her to be smart enough to move on from me after my playing days. But it's tough to, especially when you're in actuality, from 8 until 35, I had one focus. It doesn't make you the most well-rounded individual. So I paid for those mistakes of being exalted as a young man and carrying that through to 35. And then when I maybe was looking for my own identity away from baseball for the next 10 years, it got a little rough. And my family didn't survive it. Luckily, everybody's healthy and we're moving forward. But yeah, it's a tough life. I mean, everybody knows marriage is difficult, but throw that lifestyle on top of it, it's a lot. And again, to be honest with you, I didn't see as many issues because I was so selfish and center focused, trying to do what I did, So
I appreciate that perspective. So, Robin, as you transition to the more recent chapters, how did you approach life after sports?
That was difficult. Like I said, from 35 to 45, it was really tough. And then the trifecta for me was snowboard injury, spine surgery, fire at one of my companies, and my significant other asking me for a divorce. And that came within 4 months of each other. Yeah, it was a good one. That was a good year. And as Bassam knows, and every other gentleman at Coffee Club, I curled up in the fetal position for a while. I was not prepared to be there. But they say things don't show, or what they don't test, sports don't...
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger? Is that what
No, it reveals it. It doesn't build character, it reveals it. Yeah, and so I changed my focus, tried to become a better person, listened to everybody that told me I was being a jerk, took on a lot of things, and said I'm never going to do anything for money again. I'm going to do whatever I want to do that makes me happy, and that I have enough time to be somewhat of service to the people around me that I care about. And I started the Waterworks project.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, and I met a significant other that that makes me a better man almost every day. So yeah.
I mean, having seen you go through a few of those chapters, I mean, I certainly recognize that you're in a very different place now than you were 4 years ago, and even 10 years ago. You're a different human. But a lot of it does seem to be driven by your sort of self-appreciation, appreciation for what matters to you, and one of the expressions that you've been espousing around yourself, I'm at a loss for words, and that's why you recognize the notion of NATO, which you continually promoted as something that was hampering you. Can you tell the team about that and what you?
My joke to our coffee club and to most of my friends now is I try and live by the acronym NATO, not attached to outcome, because I'm really not in control of the outcomes, and they always seem to disappoint me and cause me great stress and anxiety when they weren't met. So I have chosen to take the acronym NATO, not attached to outcome. So to be quite honest, I have no idea where today will take me. If a work call comes up, I'll take it. If my kids come up and have an emergency, I'll take it. If I have time to work on another project that I can be creative with, I'll do it. I just am in a space that I want to be present. I feel like almost to the point sometimes where I don't remember so much of the past because I feel like I am here in the moment now, and that makes me sad sometimes. But I understand it's my own personal growth, and therefore it'll be better for hopefully the people around me that I stay present and not go after the brass ring and compete with everybody on the planet for titles that really don't mean much.
Can you tell us how you do that?
Yeah, you got to lose a lot. You got to lose a lot to get to that realization of what doesn't matter. Yeah, trauma and loss. Yeah.
Drew, do you remember you and I trying to keep up with him 5 years ago? We're pulling hammies. He just
Those
sprints
days are
around
gone.
us.
Well, I'm wondering how it reminds me how you satisfy that competitive edge that you've always had, because when we were working out, I remember you saying, we're not running laps, it's about sprint. In baseball, it's about strength and speed. I don't need endurance, I need to run from home base to first base, that's it.
I actually think if you took that further and expanded on it, you would say I was being very selfish in that those things I knew I could beat you at.
It felt like he could beat us at everything, though. I don't think it would have mattered.
But no, but genetically speaking, I'm a fast twitch guy, and I think everybody should choose something that they're genetically predisposed to do, whether it's physical or mental or whatever, and run with that. You'll find yourself satisfying your own inner need, right? Like I don't know what to say. I've always had this inner need to get my levels of energy out by competition. But I am changing that. I don't have to win anymore. The competition is more important than the winning now to me, which shows a lot of growth. Yeah, just the actual competing against myself is way more important to me now, because I know when I leave the match or whatever it is, I'm always the person that has to deal with my own successes and failures, not the people across from me, right? So, yeah. So that made me a lot better competitor. I used to be really intense, right? Like super intense. Now I'm intense with myself on the inside, but I'm not as aggressively intense against others now.
Reminds me of the football league.
Yeah, let's not tell that story
Let's
again.
not do that one.
But it's true. So before I turn it over to the team, I want you to tell the team, and Ons is going to think this is so cool about the brand you're going to launch, and we'll hold this reveal out until you've actually launched it. So
yeah. So my son and I just needed a project to work on together and to get closer, and he needed a break from school, and so right before the pandemic hit, we started a company, and I wanted to show him how to start a company, kind of go from concept to completion. And so we've done everything. We created a brand called JOMO, which stands for the joy of missing out. And we had an opportunity through a friend to purchase some electric bikes. So we have purchased a small inventory of electric bikes. The logo is super cool. We just did 99 designs, and ironically, I have a female graphic designer out of Jakarta is my designer.
That's
She
cool.
she had the best logo. We chose her. I use her for everything we do now. Obviously, it's cost effective compared to what we've talked about in the past. You know, it's insane. And I've showed him. The only thing we really hit a glitch on was waiting for the product to be shipped to us from China over the last year. It's been very difficult dealing with all things shipping. Obviously, everybody knows that. But we finally have them in. We're going to launch the site next week. We have roughly 300 bikes, 6 different models, 50 of each roughly. And it's called The Joy of Missing Out, JOMO. They're super cool bikes, everything from the Fat Tire Mountain. By the way, they're electric, and I don't have endurance. So the only time I actually pedal an electric bike is if I'm going down the road and I go by the road cyclists, a team of them in their gear. I pedal as slowly as I can as I go by them. That's really the only time I pedal a bike. Otherwise, I'm just full throttle on it, and that's it. So yeah, we're launching. Yeah, we're launching with e-bikes, and the other thing is I've always wanted to become like efficient or adept at waterman sports, but I've never had the time or lived in the right place. And ironically now, hopefully our next product for JOMO will be e-foils. If you guys have seen those, it's the handheld thing, get out of the water. And we just got prototypes in for those. Just shot kind of a promo that the footage you saw was insane.
So cool.
That we came up with. I have really fun, cool friends that seem to get behind my stupid endeavors. And yeah, we took out one of these foils and headed from Sarasota to Anna Maria Island. Only got like 3 miles. Like before, it was a small advisory craft. Sometimes I'm more determined than intelligent, so we should not have been out there. But I had a chase boat to make sure I wouldn't drown. But the footage that we got, no other boat was on the water that day because they shouldn't have been. And I'm up there going over these caps, and one of my friends flew a drone, and we got the most amazing footage because no one was in the bay. And we have,
So cool.
I got to show it to you guys. It's amazing. Well, you'll see it on our site eventually because hopefully that'll be a promo shot.
I asked him this morning, how do you transport the e-foil around? That's pretty big. He's like, yeah, it's an electric device. He sticks it on the back of an e-bike and rides around a trike.
Yeah, I have 3 kids, and my middle daughter has special needs. So the real great story behind the e-bikes is that we were early adopters on the dually. If you guys have been in town long enough, I'm sure you've seen us because it's pretty religious in the summer that we ride a lot. So it was already special to me to be able to do this, and in researching the e-bikes, there was a trike option, and that's really Ava, the only option she had was a trike when her deficit wouldn't allow her to get on a 2-wheeler. Now she's on a 2-wheeler, does the Summit Challenge, all things great, but it just seemed fitting to get an electric trike for her. Now the electric trike is what I turn the e-foil upside down, strap it to, and go right down Main Street in Sarasota to the marina, and then go launch from there. And everybody's like, dude, this guy's crazy. And I'm like, hey, both products, self-serving and fun. Yeah, so it's great. Yeah.
Well, let me turn it over to the team because I'm sure you guys all have lots of questions. But
I have questions going back to baseball. You said 4 years in the majors. Were they consecutive or?
No.
So you were down back in.
Oh yeah. Yeah, let's see, this is how old I'm getting, I guess it must have been 2001, because I was telling Bassam I have a 20-year reunion on Saturday in Louisville, Kentucky, because we won the championship for that AAA team, and so we're going on the field and all that. I honestly couldn't even tell you where that ring is. Man, I guess I should look for it. I have no idea where that ring is. I may have even lost that in the fire. I don't even know. But that year, if I'm not mistaken, the reason I couldn't remember even being on that team, when the guy called me, I was like, was I on the team that year? Is I made the team with the A's out of spring training, sent down to Sacramento, back up to the A's, traded to Colorado, went from Colorado Springs to the Rockies, and then got traded again. This is, by the way, this is within 3 days. This is within 3 days. This one, the last part, was 3 days. I got traded from the Rockies to the from the A's to the Rockies, Rockies to the Reds, within 3 days. So I did 3 AAAs and 3 big league teams in one season. Yeah, it was a lot. And by the way, that was 2001 because my son was 4 months old. Yeah. So the year that was the craziest year ever was the birth year of my son. So it was 2001. Wow. There you go. And now I'm going back next week for that reunion, which it was like a blip on the radar for me for the probably time I was there. Yeah.
That's amazing.
I know.
What did it feel like when the first time you got called up and you got the call?
That one was awesome. That's a lifelong dream achieved, right? And I was 24 years old, playing in New Orleans. I was with the Cubs, AAA team, but we were playing in New Orleans, and I really actually thought that the manager didn't like me that much because of a previous situation that had happened when I was younger in the minor leagues. And I picked up my phone, and he's yelling at me, "Get up to my room now," going total hard guy on me. And I was like, man, I think what I probably thought was I didn't think he knew I came in after curfew, but okay. I'll pay the fine, big deal, right? But yeah, he seemed much more angry than that. And so I went up there, and yeah, no, that was his joke because I was going to the big leagues. So yeah, I was 24 years old, went to the big leagues with the Cubs, and yeah, it was pretty special.
Was there one moment that you had during your playing time that was just like your in awe moment, like that you just always look back to that and say, "Holy, you know what? This is the most amazing thing."
Not anymore. I probably struck out 1,000 times, and I don't really think I did, but I struck out a lot of times in my career. I don't really remember many of them, if any of them. I remember the 3 home runs I hit in the big leagues. I remember a day in Pittsburgh where I went crazy and had a 7 RBI game and matched Ken Griffey Jr. for the most RBIs in a game for the Reds at the time. I think it may have been surpassed now, but at one time I was there with something. My accolades never lived up to my own dreams of what I thought I would get to as a player. So I've had to temper that, as you can tell with my personality, but it is what it is. What I've learned is baseball was just a medium to compete against myself. Now I compete against myself in anything I do or want to do. So it's all good. Yeah.
So next time you beat Drew at CrossFit, would you be happy for him?
I can't even. The reason that we're not sitting in those white chairs right there is because there's no way I could have stayed without a back. I have to use my brain now. My body's broken.
Other
What's
questions?
your favorite place to visit when you bounced around 150 cities?
Chicago is always. There's not much better than to come up in the era that I came up when. I know it's controversial era, but I mean I watched a lot of baseball games from the bench in Wrigley when Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa were doing the home run chase. I mean, if you go watch one of the 30 for 30s and pause it at one of the home plate celebrations, I'm in there somewhere. So it was a really special time in the game, even though we all know how shrouded it is. It was, at the time of it, was larger than life. So it was crazy. Yeah, it was crazy.
Heather?
I don't want to diminish your experience, so I want to make sure I'm asking this in the right way. That's if you were to look at all your friends as well as yourself, and because all athletes, right, when they're done, have this self of like, I'm lost. Who the hell am I, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think professional sports don't allow people to, like, just the nature of it. It's hard to like grow as a person. I think a lot of players might have that, but what are your friends? Have your friends kind of experienced that? Any of that to an extreme? Is it more like your situation is very different? But do you feel like you have any friends who kind of went through this whole growth period after they stopped playing, Or do you feel like, you know, some of us are really internally just like, this is it, super focused, super channeled, and then nothing else matters?
I would imagine that there's all of the above. Haven't experienced it that much because I think I distanced myself from the game initially so much that I didn't. I guess. Wow, good question. I guess I internalized it by means of not actually being around it that much anymore. So I didn't stay friends with not many outside of my circle. But again, like Bassam and most gentlemen in our coffee club, we never have a shortage of meeting new people and having new experiences and stuff. That's part of the difference, I think, is that, yeah, a lot of guys cling to it and they still want that to be their identity even after it's done, and that sometimes doesn't work out. And it's tough to have conversations. Anybody that reaches the pinnacle of their endeavor and puts in the type of hours that they do, it's tough to try and relate back again to others that don't understand that perspective. I always found that to be incredibly taxing on my psyche to try and talk baseball with others back then. I really don't want that to sound elitist in any way or presumptuous on myself, like I knew more than others, but of course you do. You played, for 15 years at the high, at a professional level, and you get, maybe in my opinion, too intense and too into that, and it's really tough to let go. They say an athlete dies twice. You're right? It is what it is. You do have to kind of figure out who you are next, or you stay in it, keep coaching, teach others, all that.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I'll ask one last question. That's
Mhm.
okay. Or not last,
Yeah.
So Robin, when you obviously so dedicated, so focused on sports through a good portion of your life, how did you finally figure out that new passion? Was there a process that you went through? Did you try lots of different things? When you're so talented and so passionate about design, where did that come from? Was that something that you always had, or did you kind of discover it later in life?
I became reacquainted with it again later in life, out of necessity. The first thing that I did when I stopped playing baseball was kind of start a graphic design web business that my brother was already doing on the side. And my dad was job with the State Department was communications, so it just seemed like I had I was able to do it and be self-taught and get efficient at it fast enough that my brother and I did some projects and stuff, and it seemed to be a way for me to move forward with my creative side. But it wasn't until I was with my significant other now, and we really got to do this project and get really design creative and really, I've had a subscription to Architectural Digest since I was 18. My mom got me that for like my birthday, a subscription to it, and then I went to Metropolitan Home, and then I went to a couple others, and so there was always a stack of design magazines. Even if I was with 4 guys in a studio apartment in Single A, there was a coffee table that was rented that had a stack of design magazines on it, because that's what I looked at when in my own free time. So that was awesome to take that passion that I hadn't had in a long time and put it full force into Waterworks. And just really quickly, for those of you who don't know, JOMO is a different project. My true project that I dove headfirst into with my partners and others and everybody. The collaboration on this project is, I say this and people don't believe it, I'm so much more proud of Waterworks because it really is a reflection of my personality and my hard work, not just my physical traits. And I don't mean that in a weird way. I just mean like everybody's always given me accolades because I could run fast, jump high, throw hard, hit a ball, whatever. I would say that probably half the members at our club, I think when they met me or we first started out, they didn't know my history. They just knew I was one of the owners at Waterworks and a nice guy, I hope, and like wanted to be there for them. Like it wasn't about me going in and being like, hey, I'm a former pro athlete, come do this. Like I really hopefully hope that that's like one of the things down the road that people find out about me down there, and it's been nice. Yeah.
Maybe you could tell them in 30, 60 seconds what Waterworks is.
Waterworks is a business and social club in Sarasota, Florida. We have 150 members, all very successful in their own right, and the culture that has been created there is one of complete acceptance and happiness, general happiness for others in their endeavors, and it just is a safe place for. We really hit our stride during the pandemic because there was no other place for people to go out and see each other, meet each other, and our building is a large building, 5,000 square feet, but spaced out enough that we had already, with the design and vision of the project, spaced it out so that everybody could have their own space, and it just became a hub of really amazing people that not only did business together but started to hang out socially because of the connection there. And it doesn't have a stuffy East Coast or golf club vibe. It just has a vibe of openness and welcomeness, and I think that comes from my partners to our staff to the actual members. And if you're in Sarasota, please stop by. I'd love to have you in. It's a really, really special place. It's very dear to me.
It really is.
Yeah.
Robin, thank you so much for
Yeah.
making the time this
Thank
morning
you.
to come and talk to the team.
Yeah.
It's great to get a different perspective, that of an athlete, and I think your story is really inspiring.
I don't know about that, but
I
okay.
think
Thank
it
you.
is. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you guys.